Welcome to The Next Level, conversations that propel business. The next hour is all about the entrepreneur, why they start businesses, how they make their businesses grow, how they overcome failures and achieve success. Your host, Bob Gibbons, founder of Riata Commercial Realty, a commercial real estate advisory and tenant advocacy firm. Bob will ask probing questions to find impactful solutions that will help take your business to the next level. And now, here's Bob Gibbons.
Welcome to The Next Level. What do you do if you're in a family-owned company and there are issues? There's a lot of issues in family-owned companies because you don't just live with these people, you work with them and you can't get away from them. I mean, I work with my wife. She's got to deal with me all the time. And I told her when she came to work with me, I really enjoy being with you on the weekends and at nights better than during the day. So if we're going to have to sacrifice one of these things, it's going to be the daytime. I don't want to start working together if that's not going to work out. So how do you set up your family business for success, and what do you do when you have problems? Well, our guest today is Jim Olan Hutcheson, and that middle name may ring a bell for you. Olan, as in Olan Mills. His family owned Olan Mills, and so he has a lot of experience in running family-owned companies. And they had another company as well, and we'll get into all of that here soon, but he has turned that from a family-owned company and gone out on his own to create a company that helps family-owned companies. And it's called Regeneration, and Regeneration-Partners is .com is one way to find them. Familybusinessregeneration.com is the main website. And so again, familybusinessregeneration.com is the way you can find them. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Bob, thank you for having me. And I have to apologize to our audience today that if I sound amazingly sexy, that's not my real voice. I think I woke up this morning with a little frog of allergies in my voice, so please forgive me if you do not understand me. But I'm excited to be here and talk about my favorite subject, which is family-owned, family-managed business.
Oh, I thought you were going to say my favorite subject is me.
No, that wouldn't make the top 3 or 4 for sure. So,
well, we're really happy you're here. As a Barry White impersonator as well. That just is a bonus. So I was that guy a few weeks ago and had a really deep, gravelly voice. And anyway, so give us a little background. Where'd you grow up?
Well, I grew up not too far from where we are sitting at this very moment. I grew up in an area of North Dallas called Northwood Hills.
Okay.
I went to a elementary school down the street from Spring Valley. Meandering Way was kind of my neighborhood. That was my hood, so to speak.
Nice.
And grew up in Dallas, graduated out of Green Hill High School, and went off to college. Had a great time at college.
Where'd you go?
I went to Arizona State, Arizona State University.
Why Arizona State?
Well, I was a track star. Now, I have to put some boundaries around that. I was a track star at a small private school in Dallas.
Yeah.
This was not, at the time, Galveston Ball, which was the top track high school in the country. But I had a little bit of talent and wanted to run track at Arizona State, which at that time had the top track team in the nation.
Wow.
And
what was your event?
My event was sprinting. I was a sprinter. And I found a different level of competition. There were 4 active Olympians on the Arizona State track team. And I know this may sound a little bit of a shock to some, but I was not one of those 4 Olympians. So at any rate, I also happened to get a good education while I was out there and have a degree in psychology and a second degree in sociology from Arizona State.
I just realized I forgot to start our video,
Okay.
so I apologize to people that are watching on the video. So you've seen a still photo of Jim for a while, and now we're going to actually have live video.
Welcome. Glad you all could join us out there today.
I wish I could say that's the first time I've done that. Once again, proving that I'm not a slick professional media guy. So you're at Arizona State. What was your degree in?
First degree was in psychology, and the second degree was in sociology.
Wow. Why those?
Well, the degree in sociology was nothing but a pure mistake. I had intended to graduate in psychology and head on to graduate school in counseling psychology. And when I went to check out, the nice lady at the checkout for senior graduation informed me that I was missing 2 classes. How that happened, I do not know. Dejected, I turned around, started to walk out, but she says, "But, Jim, you can graduate today with a degree in sociology." So I said, "Okay, great, that's me.
Take it.
I'll take that degree." And I stayed on an extra semester to complete a second degree.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. That should never happen, and yet it's amazing how frequently I hear that.
Right.
That is so discouraging. But you didn't stop there. You did go on and get a master's and some other stuff. What did you do after that?
I did. Well, really what I did in the progression of life is I went to work for my family company.
Oh,
Really had no clue where I was going to land, what I was going to do, but
so that was Olan Mills?
that was Olan Mills. And
Okay.
I entered as a part-time telemarketer. That was a humbling and today I look back and say what a great and wonderful experience. Not everyone gets the opportunity to do something like that. But for me, it worked out. Olan Mills at that time had about 300 stores, now maybe 200 stores around the nation. One of them happened to be a mile or so from where I was living at the time in Tempe, Arizona. I went to work as a part-time telemarketer. That's a very interesting role. You are measured by the hour, by the shift, by the day, by the week.
They measure
And
everything, don't they?
They measure everything,
Time
how
of
many
call
calls
and-
you make and how many sales you make. And
So
so
are you
I'm
calling individuals saying, "Can I
Yes,
get your family down here?" Or
calling households. We sold a
my
coupon over the telephone, much like a book club. You would sell a coupon over the telephone that would entitle someone to come in 3 times within a year. And, of course, they would prepay for that coupon, but then every time they came in, they were entitled to a free 8x10 color portrait, professionally made.
yeah.
So that was a very interesting start to a professional career that I ended up being there for 21 years. During that time, I went back to school, got an MBA from Rensselaer Polytech Institute, RPI. And for any engineers that are watching this program, they will certainly know that. It's one of the top engineering schools in the world, which says very little about their Master's in Business program,
I was going to
of
ask.
which I was a member of. But wonderful school, and if you like hockey, another great reason to know about it. But it's in upstate New York, right outside of Albany, in a little town called Rensselaer. And I'll bet you there's not 5 people listening to this program that can spell Rensselaer.
Wait a minute. Why did you decide to go there?
Well, they had a program that allowed me to continue to work and attend college or a graduate program. It was a cohort program. Today, you would refer to that as an executive MBA.
I got you. So, but did you actually have to go there?
Yes.
Okay.
I was there every other weekend for all day Friday, all day Saturday, and part day on Sundays.
Oh my!
So.
I did my MBA at night, working full time during the day, and then going to school at night. And I still remember when I lived in Austin, and unfortunately I got moved. So I started my MBA here in Dallas at University of Dallas. Then I got moved to LA. Then I got moved to Austin, and you can't transfer hours. But fortunately, I made some deals with the school, and they let me take a few classes by correspondence or at a sort of a sister school in Austin. But I remember taking the bus to work, which I could do it. Austin at that time had free bus service for like a year and a half, just as a test. And so I would take the express bus from my house to work so that I could study while I was sitting on the bus.
Well, that deserves some good check marks if you can study on the bus.
Check
So,
marks.
yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Never do it again, etc.
Well, in addition, I am at my ripe age. I am currently enrolled and have a pending degree in behavioral economics from the London School of Economics.
Oh,
So
wow.
I travel to London for 15 days every quarter to do the program, and then they assign work to be done in between on-site visits. And we'll be starting my thesis for the London School of Economics here in a few months. So Pending I pass that, then I will graduate, finish coursework, and graduate in 2019.
Okay, so you said at your self-described advanced age you decided to do this. So why did you decide to do this? I mean, you own your own company, so
Right.
you're not trying to prove up your
Right.
brilliance to somebody up the food chain. So what was so important about this degree?
Well, there are a couple of things, Bob, and maybe the first is that it's truly a fascinating topic and subject. When I was in college, there were two fields of study that, had they been available at that time, I probably would have gone in that direction. One was a field of positive psychology, which is truly fascinating. The field of psychology, up until fairly recently, was all about healing those afflicted, the downtrodden, the ones suffering, the pain, resolving that. There was really almost no emphasis on what are the people that are thriving and feeling fulfilled and have zest and enthusiasm and are fully engaged in life. What do they do? How do we get more people fully engaged in life? And that's the study of positive psychology.
I love that because, I mean, it's kind of like strength finders. Instead of
Exact-
always focusing on what you can't do and trying to improve on that, hey, focus on what you can
That's
do well.
exactly right. And many of the disease models, it's about repairing the disease. It's a medical model of let's fix what's wrong as opposed to let's build on the strengths that we already have. Well, that's the field of positive psychology. Great field, some fantastic books and courses, and I went back and got a certification in positive psychology. I don't remember if I graduated maybe 3 years ago, but another new field, which is where why I'm at the London School of Economics, is this whole theory about behavioral economics, which really comes down to why people make certain decisions in life. Mm-hmm. It's a combination of psychology and economics, and believe it or not, the whole economic model that I grew up with was built around the rational man.
You ever met one of those guys? I haven't.
I've met moments of that guy, but
that's about all we get, isn't it?
That's right. But the economic model that we all grew up with is different and requires a little more emotion in those decisions.
Interesting. Well, we'll talk more about that. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. And we're back, and we are talking to Jim Hutcheson of Regeneration Partners, and you can find them online at familybusinessregeneration.com. So we were just talking about your behavioral economics degree from the London School of Economics. So I kind of interrupted you for a break as you were describing what that's all about.
Well, first, let me just clarify what you said. It's a pending degree. I have to actually complete all the work before I get the degree. But I'm on track. I'm on track for it. So that is really a new and exciting field. And what you're finding is that presidential, not cabinet, but appointed positions now are focusing in on the behavioral economics, why and how people make certain decisions or judgments.
Yeah.
This has virtually, it has a limited application in my professional field. I did not go back to advance my credentials or anything. This is really about a personal growth and development. One of our core beliefs at Regeneration is that we will stay engaged. We will continue to learn. We do not have all the answers. And so we're going to do everything we can. Everybody on our staff, which is a small staff, thank goodness, because we pay for it all, but everybody on our staff participates in continuing education in one form or another. So this is really setting the example for the rest of the folks that we work with or that I work with, that let's keep going, let's keep pushing, let's be relevant in 15 years just as we are relevant today.
Yeah, and I applaud you for doing that because, I mean, the way you're doing that is making such a huge sacrifice. I mean, you're actually getting a degree. You have to go to London, although that's no big, burden on most people. I love London, but I'm also in school. But I'm just going down to the community college in my town, which is a great college, Collin College up in Collin County, and I'm taking a class on WordPress because I have 2 WordPress sites that I'm tired of having to rely on somebody else to always update and and tweak minor ways. So I was like, you know what, I'll take the class. I'll try and figure it out.
It's fantastic, Bob. That really is, and it doesn't matter whether you're going to London School of Economics or Collin County or El Centro. It doesn't matter. The learning is something that you can apply, hopefully, to your life and make your life better, and feel more engaged and a part of, have greater control over your own life. So I applaud you for that.
Well, thank you. I will have to see how the websites turn out before we pass full judgment. So let's go back to your, you graduate college, you're in Tempe, Arizona, you're working for Olan Mills doing the cold calling thing. And by the way, when I was 17 years old, I had a cold calling job, telemarketing job. We didn't call it telemarketing job at that time because nobody had invented it yet. This was 1980, I think, something like that. I was selling office supplies over the phone, and it was not a fun job. I did not enjoy it, but I was reasonably good at it, I guess. I made more money than my friends did who were doing manual labor jobs that summer. But so you were doing that. You were selling packages, coupons, et cetera, and I've ended up in a lot of Olan Mills studios before, so I'm sure you sold something to my parents at some point.
Well, I hope so.
So how long did you end up in the cold calling machine?
Well, that was the first step. That was my entry position with my family's company. I probably did that for about a year and a half, but I worked in that space for probably 3 or 4 years. I became a telemarketing manager and then a telemarketing supervisor over several other units and such like that. But my career progression was really in the entry level while I was in college. And so I joined our firm in early 1976, worked in it for about 3 years, or so in entry level. So I was a photographer, I was a salesperson, I scheduled appointments, and all of these would be considered entry-level positions.
I see. And did everybody that you worked with know that you were one of the family members?
No, this may sound funny, but the answer would be eventually yes, but I carry a different name. So my last name is Hutcheson, not Mills.
Right.
So upon first meeting me, I was just a regular guy. As they got to know me, someone would whisper in their ear, that's the grandson of the founder of the company or something. My middle name is Olan, James Olan Hutcheson. And so I was able to kind of, skate through somewhat anonymously. I moved around a lot. I went from Tempe, Arizona, which I had this wonderful plan that I would go work for my family's company in San Diego for a year, and that I might go up to Denver and work there during the winter season. Wow. And I had something in my mind about how this might work out. And my uncle, who's also, his name was James Olan Mills, changed it to Olan Mills II, but he flew out to meet me in Dallas. We met halfway from Tempe and Chattanooga. And he invited me to join the corporate training program, of which I was the first person in that program. So it was an opportunity for me to actually figure out whether or not I wanted to work in my family's company. I accepted. I had no other offers on the table, so this was an easy choice for me. The drawback was that they wanted to move me to Schenectady, New York.
Oh, my.
And having been in Phoenix, Arizona, and with visions of living in San Diego and Denver for a while, Schenectady, New York did not fit into that plan. It wasn't in the final running like HQ2 for Amazon. It wasn't one of those that made the cut. But at any rate, I took that role, moved to the Northeast, and went through a series of progressively greater management responsibilities. And over the next several years, took over the Northeastern United States, added Canada to that responsibility, added the UK and parts of the central eastern coast, became what's referred to as a district manager or regional manager, and then ultimately president of the company.
Wow. Congrats. So how old were you when you became president?
Well, that's testing me a little bit. I want to say maybe 37, 38.
So you'd been there maybe 20 years, well, not even 20 years.
Yeah,
15?
17, 18 years,
Okay.
somewhere around there.
So that's still pretty fast to go from, the part-time guy selling packages and coupons to being the president.
Yes, and I will tell you that every business has unique aspects to it. It's hard to go hire somebody from the outside and bring them into an environment like Olan Mills. You can do that at the very top, but working your way up through the ranks is really quite a challenge. And so, yes, I progressed fast, and I would say that all those people that wonder about their careers in retail, typically retail has job opportunities galore, and to work the floor in a retail operation and rise up to 3 or 4 levels above is a fairly unique element that retail offers. So, yes, I was promoted pretty quick, but it became one of these things where I spent 15 years of my career doing nothing but internal turnarounds within our own company. So I had exposure that might have made me road weary. In fact, it felt more like I had several decades of work underneath me because it was always changing. There were always problems to deal with.
And so you guys were all U.S. and U.K.? Were you beyond that?
UK, Canada, United States. When I joined the company, we had, as I mentioned, about 250, maybe a little less than that, locations. When I left out with about 1,000 locations throughout U.S., Canada, UK, and 15,000 employees on the payroll.
That's incredible. And I assume there are lots of other family members in the business?
No, actually there were none. And I was the only third generation at that time that was working in the company. And so no other third generation, although I have an older brother and older sister, they did not work in the company. I have 5 cousins. None of them worked in the company as well.
Now, that's interesting to me because I worked in a family company before, not my family, but another family's company in my last position. And it seemed like the longer you go and the more family members there are, just by, people marrying and having kids, that you end up with more family members in the company, but not so in Olan Mills.
That's right.
That's just the opposite of what I would have expected.
Well, every family is different in that regard, and I have some incredibly talented, really seriously gifted siblings and cousins, but their gifts were in other areas, and they've risen up in their fields to be notable, successful. They're great people, but their passion was not this family business.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think, and I worked for my uncles, by the way. My mother was the daughter, and she was not seriously employed in any kind of leadership role. She certainly had a job there, but and I don't mean to minimize that, but it was not a job of direction or leadership of the firm. These guys just chose different directions. Now, ultimately, one of my cousins did join after I left, and he was there for several years, and he did a good job. So,
but eventually this came to an end. Why
Yes.
did you leave the family business?
well, that really gets into why regeneration. So we were growing during my time in senior leadership about 28% a year, compounded growth. We were doing the hockey stick growth thing. This was pre-internet, growth type numbers, staggering numbers, and we were doing very, very, very well in every regard. We saw a lot of families. We processed millions of photographs, millions of families a year through our processing facilities. But my 2 uncles really were the owners of this company. They were the holding company, and they had issues between the 2 of them that created an environment where we needed to reach out and find outside professional help.
Gotcha. All right, we'll pick up the story on the other side of these messages. Hi, this is Bob Gibbons with Riata Commercial Realty. If your office lease is going to be expiring in the next year or two, the one thing I would tell you you definitely do not want to do is exercise a renewal option. Now, that may sound a little nuts when you negotiate for that renewal option. Why wouldn't you actually want to use it? Well, the reason is because while you want to have one as a reservation for your space so the landlord can't lease the space out from under you, that option may not actually work the way you want it to now. It may have made sense 5 years ago, but it doesn't today. The only thing that changes when you exercise a renewal option are the expiration date and the rent. But you may want to do other things like have another option to renew, have an option to terminate or expand. You may want to be able to expand now or have a new base year for your operating expenses. There's all kinds of things that need to be considered. So we recommend that you renegotiate, not renew. For more information, contact me, Bob Gibbons, at texastenantrep.com. That's texastenantrep.com. We are back. So your uncles own this company, and you're working in it as the president. Why do you decide it's time to go?
Well, by the way, I've changed my look for this next segment. I've taken off my glasses off, and maybe I'll sound different with my glasses off.
I didn't even recognize you.
Okay. Okay. Well, here's the reality of working in a family business. That pretty much every family business in the country will have problems from time to time. Some of those problems and issues will require outside help. Other issues and problems will not. Some you can just simply have a good friend talk to you. You can have a knowledgeable confidant help you through these issues and challenges. Sometimes a university-based program just to gain some education will satisfy the needs and challenges. But we know by the data that 2/3 of all family firms will not survive into the next generation.
Into the second generation?
Second, then third, then fourth. So the numbers, first generation, your odds of making it are 33%, or 66% will not make it. The second generation, a mere 10%.
Wow. Now,
Third,
in those, I'm sorry, you were going to say in the third?
And the third, about 4%. So what that really comes down to is about 2/3 do not make it through each successive generation.
And is that because they fail or because they just decide to sell or a combination?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
It sounds more dramatic to say that they failed, but that's inaccurate. They simply no longer exist. They may have sold, and it may have been a very positive reason for no longer staying in business or staying in business as a family unit. So at any rate, pretty much every family firm will face those challenges. So that is the core underwriting. Our business was no different. We were faced with a second generation to third generation issue. But it was really not a succession issue as much as there were disagreements and conflicts at the holding company level about the direction of the company. Had nothing to do with digital photography, or let me say it had very little to do with digital photography.
What year would this had been?
I left in 94, December 31st, 1994.
So this was definitely digital photography was coming pretty big.
It was on the horizon.
But
it was
cell phones, nothing
right,
that you could carry other than a photo.
But what made Olan Mills unique, and I'm skipping around a little bit, so please bring me back to the point. What made our company unique was our marketing approach. We did telemarketing. That's a one-to-one, highly involved approach. It's an active marketing approach, whereas passive is billboards, radio, television advertisements, newspaper, what's called freestanding inserts in newspapers and flyers and things. Those are all passive marketing. Active marketing is the door-to-door and the telemarketing. There's a name for it, and it's called direct marketing.
Yep.
Well, direct marketing was coming under regulation by the government. People were becoming annoyed about telemarketing. Now, here's what really happened at Olan Mills, which I think is kind of an interesting backstory. What really happened was the birth of the answering machine. And as the answering machine was birthed and people started buying answering machines, people stopped answering the telephone during dinner or during, the TV show they were watching and such. And they just simply went back and played their messages that were left for them. Well, as sales of the answering machine became more dramatic and impacted more and more households, the value and the efficacy of telemarketing began to drop. And so it required a new business model. And because there was conflict at the very top of this organization about which way do we go, that was one of the reasons why our company no longer exists today. So you asked me a question earlier, which was not as interesting as what I just said. So feel free to ask me the same question.
No,
again.
I have no more uninteresting questions to ask you. Well, that is interesting. So that's yet another example of technology changing the behavior of consumers, and that has unintended consequences.
That's right. That's
to
right.
other businesses.
Well, let me come back and answer the question that you asked earlier, and that is, why? So we had some issues at the very top of our organization that required some wholesale change. I'd been in that job. I've been in that company in that position for almost 22 years. It was time. It was simply time. And I had this vision of working with other families that might be going through similar challenges, coming in as an outsider, bringing to bear my successful business experience. Again, we grew to become the largest in the world at what we do. And my organization that I was running was very proud of it. I had a lot of great people, a lot of great memories, and it was really a wonderful life that I had. But one day I woke up and said, is there something more for me? And so that's when I left. We had hired, lawyers, accountants, business consultants to help solve some of the issues at the very top. We hired priests, therapists, psychiatrists. I think there were a few Indian chiefs and bottle washers mixed into all that. But still, the values difference between the two primary shareholders was still impacting, and the job had lost some fun for me.
Yeah.
And even though I could have stayed in the role that I was in, which was a great job, great career, I really wanted to do something different. Now, there's another story, and that was that I was traveling a part of 47 weeks a year for 17 years. Had a wife, had a wife, 2 small children, and the travel thing was starting to beat me down. And I had envisioned a life where I would not be traveling quite as much and would have a little more control over my own, day in, day out schedule. So I left December 31st, 1994, and with the dream of opening up a family business consulting group. This was the field of family business consulting had been birthed prior 7-8 years, so it was still a very new field. And it was really taken from the therapeutic model. And I saw a different value than just the therapy and the communication piece, but how does that therapy, communication, how do those relationships impact this, goose that is laying golden eggs called the business?
Yeah.
If the business succeeds, you have so many more good options than if the business is failing. So solving communication doesn't need a family business consultant. Solving the business issues doesn't need a communications expert or a therapist. But if it's a family-owned, family-managed company, we know the rates of, perpetuation, failing or ceasing to exist, 66% in every generation. You need someone that understands both the family, communication, and the business issues. And not from an academic standpoint, but from a here's how it really happens.
Yeah. Now, your experience at Olan Mills, that obviously is what perpetuated you into this and to recognize that there's a need. Did you see this as a viable future for yourself because you saw somebody that tried to do this at Olan Mills and did it well, or that did it poorly? Either way, motivating you toward that end.
Yeah. So we hired actually 2 people to work with us, and we were doing pretty well at the time. We were doing very, very well. That's an understatement. without getting into the details of that. But we hired people. And at the end of the day, neither of the people that we hired that were family business consultants moved the needle. Mm-hmm. And they did not move the needle for various reasons, but it was, I think their recommendations and counsel fell on deaf ears out of credibility for understanding how the business operates. That piece is very important.
So the consultants didn't understand how it worked, therefore they had no credibility from the family members.
They didn't have enough credibility.
Okay.
And so nothing happened. And at the end of the day, it seemed to me like we could do this better. But there was no skill set out there that could marry both the family issues and family dynamics and communication along with serious business understanding, experience. This is not the kind of thing that you go to take a class in and come out and say, here's how the business should operate. I mean, it's putting in structures and protocols and procedures and documentation of various things and not just having a kumbaya effect. Now, both of the people that we hired were very good, very talented. I'm friends with one of them. One of them's passed away, but good friends with one of them. But at the end of the day, this is about securing somebody's wealth. And so it was my experience that when I formed Regeneration, our founding vision and mission was to increase shareholder wealth and improve communication and relationships inside of a family business. It's not just about one or the other. Mm-hmm. It's about bringing both of those things to bear. And so that really is what launched me, was the experience that I had with these other people that we worked with.
So when you work with a family now, is one of the first things you do is to try and align those values? Because you had talked about at Olan Mills how you had the two partners that didn't really share values. So, I mean, is that really the starting place, is what are the values, what are the common goals and objectives?
That's a two-part answer.
Okay.
Let me give you the first part.
You got 30 seconds for the first part.
The first part is that, yes, without a shared vision, without a common goal and understanding and agreement and buy-in around that common goal and shared vision, you really don't have a family business engagement. You've got something different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that being a huge problem. And this family that I worked for, it wasn't about the money. They were making great money. It was about it was a power struggle, quite honestly. And the young guys were ready to take over, and the older guys were like, "No, you're not." And ultimately, that did not end well, and thus I ended up in my own company, like everybody else had to make a change at one point. But right. We will pick this up on the other side of the last break. Right. Okay, we are back. So you've started Regeneration Partners. What's your first step?
With our clients, the first step is always to find out what the individuals, the key people, the key players in the family business system, meaning more than just the family, but also some of the senior executive or leadership or outside advisors. What are the hopes and dreams and goals? What are the real issues? We may get hired by one person who has a perspective, but not the whole perspective. People hire us typically because they're in pain. There's some kind of problem or issue that's impacting either the wealth that they can receive or their perceived wealth that they're losing out on, or some kind of relationship that is just simply creating an environment that's just no fun. Just don't want to live my life like this. So our first step is what we refer to as the discovery phase. The discovery phase is really about finding out what their hopes and dreams and aspirations for our time together is all about.
And are you doing that with the person or the people at the top of the organization initially, or are you doing this all the way down through the ranks of the family?
Well, it all depends. We don't know where we're going until we get started. And so in some cases, we've had cases where we've had one-on-one confidential interviews with as many as 25, 28 people in one case. But typically those interviews are limited because we don't need to meet with everybody to understand what the groundwork or the foundation of the real issues and challenges are. So typically that's 10, 12 people that we would meet with, and we'll have enough of a story from that group to understand where the possible solutions lie.
And, I was looking at your website, and it was interesting, some of the things, the services that you guys provide, all kinds of stuff: conflict management, succession planning, family business strategy, governance, fiscal responsibility. And then this one surprised me: addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Why addiction? I mean, it seems like all the rest of that is so, stuff you would find in almost any organization, and then addiction kind of is a bit of a right turn.
Well, so thank you for asking about that. So this is a huge issue, not just in family businesses, but in our entire society. I mean, now we hear today about the big opioid crisis and such. Well, addictions play a big role in family firms, and so that was one of my original contributions to this field, is that people were simply not addressing the real issues. So by way of background, when I mentioned my two uncles, one of my uncles died from acute alcohol poisoning in the hospital. I have a family where I am covered up in alcohol and addiction issues. I'm not in recovery, not that I know of, don't need to be. So the gene bypassed me. But I've dealt with probably helping, I'm making this number up. I could go back and count it, but maybe 100 people get into recovery. Now, the reason this is important is that you can't build a system around somebody who is impacted by addiction. Here's what we know. In addiction backgrounds, in families that have addiction, there's low levels of effective communication and low levels of trust. We get hired because there's no communication or weak communication and low levels of trust. So oftentimes when I'm meeting with somebody, or one of my two partners are meeting with somebody for the very first time, we will ask them out of the blue, so tell us about the addiction issues. And they will get this look on their face and say, how did you know? Well, we know because we've been doing research now for 22 years on our client base. It's obviously confidential information. But what we know is that about 58% of all of our client work that we've accepted or we've interviewed with has an active or a recent addiction issue that has impacted the family company. So we are not addiction specialists, although I have served on the board of the largest and maybe most prestigious addiction residential treatment program, not because I am a specialist in the space, but because I refer a lot of people into and help them get into not just the recovery phase, but re-engagement into life. Getting sober is the easier part of the two. The living the full life of recovery is more difficult. So as that impacts family firms, chances are there probably, there's an addiction issue. Not always, but most of the cases there is. That must be addressed to bring a lasting or a sticky solution, comprehensive solution to this entire family. So
interesting. That's and I know that there are addiction issues within companies as well, and I've had situations in business where that has been a factor. But when you add in the family issues on top of that, whether it's the person in the company that's got the addiction or the person in the company who has a family member, child, whatever, that has the addiction, either way, their full attention is not going to be on their responsibilities.
Let me go academic on you for a second.
All right.
There's a principle out here that's called systems theory, and you can call it family systems theory. What that says is that everything is interconnected and interrelated, and a change in one part can have an impact on all other parts. Modify this family systems theory to be family business systems theory. And what that says is the same exact thing, but you can't look at a business and only one aspect of it. You can't look at the family and only see one aspect of it. You have to look and see how do all these things intertwine and interconnect with each other. So, in other words, if Junior has a drug and alcohol issue that must be treated in a residential treatment program and you want them to have the best care possible, the fees for that can range literally all over the board. But if you're going to go to a high-end facility, That could be as much as $70,000 a month.
A month.
A month.
Oh.
And, you know, the current thinking is that a minimum of 3 months and more likely 6 months of treatment. You can be talking about $250,000 for Junior, who maybe doesn't work in the business, doesn't have a job, is already living on the wallet of the parents. And you have other children that may be working in the business, and maybe they're getting paid market rate. But mom and dad just spent $250,000 for Junior, and they're looking and saying, wait a minute, I've been the good kid. What am I getting here?
Prodigal son.
Why is this, that's not fair. And so you can see where the resentment or the relationships, not for all families, but for some families, they're looking at it and saying, hey, this isn't fair. So all of that has to be flushed out to have a sticky, lasting, positive outcome.
Especially if Junior really doesn't want to be helped. I mean, there's one thing about saying, I want to get rid of the consequences of my addiction versus I really want to get rid of the addiction. And those are very different things. So I would think that if those other siblings are seeing that and saying, well, yeah, mom and dad are spending all this money, but my brother or sister, they're going through the motions, but really doesn't want to really be healed, really be free of this addiction, that's going to be some huge conflicts, especially if they feel like they're having their inheritance, so to speak, squandered on somebody who really doesn't want the healing. Interesting.
Right.
So, I mean, how do you guys get business? Is it all word of mouth?
Well, it is, and we obviously have a website, which you have mentioned a couple times, so thank you for that. Websites don't get business for us. Websites draw people that have an issue or want to investigate. I will tell you that we are and will remain a boutique consulting group. What does that mean? That we're small, and we want to stay small. So at the risk of sounding like it doesn't matter, I really don't mean that, but we will receive about 120 opportunities on an annual basis to go to work someplace, with a family business somewhere in the world, primarily the U.S. Lots of client opportunities in Europe as well. We'll take about 6 to 7 a year. So we're accepting about 5% of the work that comes our way.
My goodness.
Now, a lot of these are not what we would consider to be a full engagement. So how do they find us? A lot of them find us on the internet. We're pretty careful about the work we take, and it doesn't matter how messy it is. It doesn't matter the size of the firm. Of course, they have to be large enough to cover our fees and expenses and such like that. But what we're really looking for is places where we can have a positive impact. It really is our mantra to have a positive impact on our clients' lives and families. It's not about a job. This is a passion for all of us. It's my passion to get up in the morning and go be lucky enough to go work with family-owned, family-managed firms. And, that's a privilege to be invited into the living room and to be invited into their offices and share confidential information and to help these people and to hopefully make a positive difference in their life. I think because of our passion that we stand out alone. This is not a job. If we tried to take twice as many or 3 times as many clients, which we easily could, then we're managing people that are doing the work. All 3 of the partners in this firm want to do the work. So in every one of our engagements, there are 2 of us assigned. There are 2 people that work on it. So I'm engaged with every one of our clients, as is my Dallas partner, Ellie Hansen. But Ellie's been with me for 10 years, and Marianne Zimmerman, who lives in Scottsdale, she's been with me for 10 years as well.
Interesting. So the way you price this cannot be an hourly fee, I can't imagine, because you go into these, you really don't know how long this is going to take. So it's got to be a flat fee with all kinds of contingencies built into it, I would think.
Great question. And again, this is one of the things that I think helped in the field. We want to make a difference. That doesn't mean an hour or 2 hours on the job. It means that we're here for the results. So all of our work is restricted to 1-year minimum engagements.
Oh, wow.
And if you're not interested in a year, then we're probably just not a good fit for you. But look at the therapeutic model. Therapists don't ever say, if you go in for marriage counseling, let's go work on it for a couple hours. What do you really want? Do you really want it better? If you do, you're going to have to commit to it.
Well, very good. Well, Jim, I'm sorry we're going to have to end it there. Thank you so much. We could easily go on for another hour. For our listeners, please go to familybusinessregeneration.com to learn more. And if you want to know more about the show, just look up The Next Level Show on wherever you get podcasts. Please subscribe. Go to YouTube, same thing. Leave us a review. We'd really appreciate it. We'll be back next week with another great guest. Bye.